welcome. You're listening to Digging Star Wars, your online journal of the films that inspired George Lucas to create the Star Wars saga.
Hello and welcome in this episode. I am very excited to talk about the film Test Pilot, but first let me introduce my guest. His name is Gaetan Pappalardo, and he is a fellow classmate of mine from Westchester University, but more importantly, as his bio reads, Gaetan grew up on KISS, street hockey, and Transformers. He teaches third grade at Greenfield School in West Deptford, New Jersey, is a fellow of the Pennsylvania Writing and Literature Project, and blogs for the official website of the George Lucas Educational Foundation, edutopia.org. He is the 2011-2012 Teacher of the Year for West Deptford School District, and his first book is Louis Licks and the Wicked Snake's Battle Axe, and he rocks the axe. Please welcome Gaetan. Hey, how are you?
I'm doing good.
That is perhaps the awesomest bio ever. But I've asked other guests to write stuff. They're like, I work with you. I know you from school. That's really cool. Just a couple questions on your bio, because I think it's awesome. So, Transformers, like that's the thing that stuck out. Like I got the KISS thing from the Louis Licks thing and all that, and certainly know that you're a huge hockey fan. But out of all the stuff of that era, Transformers.
Transformers. Transformers was my 4 o'clock go-to. When I was 10.
Right.
In the coming home from school. Walking home from school, all I could think about was watching Transformers, hoping it was a new episode. It was like one of those things. It's you come home and you never know. Is it going to be a new one or not a new one? It's a repeat, and it was Transformers was amazing, and I'm happy that I could share that stuff. Transformers with my own son now. Buying the old school cartoons, and they actually still come on the Hub channel.
Yeah, I'm amazed that franchise, not just because of the movies, but with, like you said, the new cartoons on the Hub. It's amazing how it's kind of gone. It's done a lot with what Star Wars has done. It's gone to generational things, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it has. It definitely has. And and with the movies, the movies, we can talk about the movies another time. It might be another episode. But I think Optimus Prime is like that ultimate mentor for everyone. All the little kids want to be Optimus. He's a great, if you want to say, I guess you could say he's a hero. He's also a great leader, and he makes some tough decisions there as Optimus.
And when I read your bio too, one thing that I want to ask you is what's involved in being a fellow? Is that is that another word for member of the writing project? Do you contribute or?
It's basically the Pennsylvania Writing and Literature Project at Westchester. Has a huge membership. Also about teachers go through a pretty rigorous program every summer, either through a writing project or a reading project. And when you finish it, you become a fellow, and basically you join a professional organization. That you can they do a lot of stuff. They do a lot of meetings on right now it's going on Saturdays. You can meet up with fellows and share your writing and talk about professional books and different things. And they have a lot of events that go on throughout the whole year and conferences. So if you're a fellow, you definitely get to be involved in that stuff, either presenting or just, being involved and, just going to seeing these awesome people that they bring in too, authors and different educational leaders. It's definitely, it's kind of like, you're a fellow, It's like you get, you ever see A Beautiful Mind?
Mm-hmm.
You get the pen, they kind of drop the pen, it's kind of like that.
Yeah, that's cool. No, it's very cool. And speaking of books, like I've since I first met you to now, seeing everything that happened with Louis Licks is just awesome. Like I know it was first an ebook, and now I think it's hard copy, correct? It's in print.
It's in print now, yes.
Yeah, and you've done the book circuit, and can you kind of like just briefly walk us through like what was that like from the inception of the idea to where you're at now? The fact that your name's on a book, like how cool was that?
Yeah, it's pretty cool and amazing. I've been writing kids stuff for about 15 years now, trying to be published, and it it's, they always say a published author is just an author that didn't quit, So it's just being persistent and writing, and I think the latest book that actually was published, Louie Licks, it's definitely me, and I think growing up and writing, and I've always tried to write stuff that I've always watched or read. Not necessarily that wasn't always me. It's like, you always say, well, you start out and it's totally honorable to copy somebody. As a writer or, a filmmaker, you have your, people you look up to, and you try and do something like that. But I think
that's the whole basis of digging Star Wars, is like seeing what George Lucas liked.
Yeah.
Incorporated in his own films.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think, the whole, it's really hard to put into words how amazing it is to see your name on a book. But also I think that Louie Licks turned out to be my first published book because it's me. Right. And I finally found that. I finally, you always tell kids and write what you know. And I always tried to write stuff I thought I knew.
Right.
And basically Louie Licks is music and it's science fiction. And it's all. Yeah. So there's three things I do the most about, and it kind of came together and came out to be one of my best stories, and turned out to be a published story.
That's awesome. And now, do your students see you differently, that you kind of have a presence in the store, like they can go to Barnes and Noble and see your book there, or doesn't faze them at all?
Well, well, my book, however, is not in Barnes and Noble.
Sorry.
But it's you can get it print on demand there, so if you want it there. But to get into Barnes and Noble, I'm with a small publisher, so to get in Barnes and Noble, you give some DNA, some blood and stuff. But anyhow, it's definitely different when you see your book, on your own bookshelf in your room, and you see kids, reading it, and it also is a strange relationship. Is kind of different too, because I did a book event at my school, so you have kids come in, they're buying your book, and you have your own students, and you see them the next day, and you have kids coming afterwards and coming into your room. I have my own students saying, "No, can I buy your book?" and make sure I bring them in tomorrow. And in one hand, kids are handing you money for your book, and you're signing it, and then 5 minutes later, you're telling them to kind of, well, you got to get to work now.
Yeah, right.
It's kind of weird. The relationship is strange. It's like, trying to balance, this kid just bought my book. I think he doesn't have to really, well, you don't have to do that page today or something.
Yeah, right.
It's a real strange, kind of relationship that it kind of shifted. But it's definitely, like I said, beautiful to see my book, and on the other hand, now I'm trying to balance that with also teaching kids. So, right. which is two different things.
Right. Absolutely. And the last thing I want to talk about, I think it's very interesting. I kind of tweaked your bio a little, because I know you wrote that you blogged for Edutopia, and when you go to edutopia.org, like right there in the banner, it clearly lists that it's George Lucas's Educational Foundation, and that. I'm trying to find the right word. It reminded me, like, oh, that's right. This guy's like a couple heartbeats away from the man. What's that like? Like, can you just, you don't have to go into the full blown history of Edutopia, but like, what's the nature of what you write and what's Edutopia about?
Yeah, it was bizarre how I found out about Edutopia years ago when they used to be in print. So they're not in print anymore. Online, it's just digital. So this magazine showed up in my mailbox, and I pulled it out, and I see Edutopia, and I'm like, what is this? Because as a teacher, you get zillions of magazines and whatever papers in there, people trying to get you to read stuff and to subscribe or whatever it is. So I see the book, and I pull it out, and I Edutopia, and I look at the bottom, and I say it says George Lucas's Education Foundation. I go, whoa! I didn't even know he had. I didn't even know anything about it, and I've been a fan of Star Wars, for forever.
Right.
It's I'm like, wow, and I started reading it, and like, wow, it's pretty cutting edge stuff. It's pretty innovative. It's a lot of a lot of digital and a lot of technology in it, a lot of creativity, of course. And I started reading it, and I started kind of writing some letters to the editor about educational stuff. And then when they went digital, they approached me to kind of moderate some of their online stuff. I was like, kind of like a social media thing. Mm-hmm. And then they approached me to blog like on a regular basis. And, I back, I believe, 4 or 5 months ago, I kind of took a little break from blogging from them, just because I was getting a little too crazy in my own life. But it's basically that's how it started, and they've been really awesome. I mean, all the things that I want to write, they totally, give me great advice on it. It's not just I'm writing and I'm blogging and they're taking it and either printing it or totally editing it themselves. So I have like an editor there, who's really awesome.
That's cool.
And and we would go back and forth and talk about projects, and they definitely had some opportunities. Through them, I got to interview John Legend.
Wow.
Yeah, because he's really big into music education, and I was approached. They were having this event in Washington D.C. by a publicist, and asked me to cover it for Edutopia, and Edutopia said, "Yeah, go ahead and do it." And John Legend's really into charter schools right now, and it's, with the public and the charter, it's kind of like they're butting heads right now. But it was interesting to talk to him about what he thinks about, arts education, in general. But anyway, with Edutopia, it's actually a blast writing for them. I always look forward to something like that, even though after putting the kids to bed, doing my graduate work, trying to launch a book. And but then I get to write, and it's kind of like almost like that freedom, to do it. It wasn't like kind of stuck in some kind of mode with Edutopia. But yeah, it's definitely interesting. And no, I haven't met the man. And I definitely get I'm still going to hold them to that free tour of Skywalker Ranch when I ever get.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, it's a given.
But yeah, that was definitely my little Edutopia thing. I would definitely have to get back and do a little writing for them.
Well, that's awesome. And thank you so much for explaining and sharing all that. We're going to start talking about Test Pilot now, but first we're going to take a quick break. So please enjoy this music track from my niece, Rachel Sabella, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. I'm your host, Chris Mitch, and I'm here with Gaetan, and we're going to talk about Test Pilot. Now, Gaetan, was this your first time seeing this film, Test Pilot?
It was. First time.
Yeah.
Never even heard of it.
Yeah. Thanks to me, right? So, for those of you who've never heard of Test Pilot, it's a 1938 film directed by Victor Fleming, and perhaps the biggest claim to fame is its cast, which stars Clark Gable, Myrna Loy, Spencer Tracy, and Lionel Barrymore, who you may remember from It's a Wonderful Life. And in short, the movie tells the story of a test pilot, his wife, and his best friend. Gable plays the test pilot. Loy also plays his wife, and his best friend is played by Spencer Tracy. In it, Gable's character has, Jim Lane is his character's name, has a problem with alcohol, and it definitely affects his marriage, and to a degree, his flying. That's really it. And I don't want to make it sound like the film's not about a lot, but the film's really not about a lot. The funny thing was, I think it's an interesting study, but, the previous episode we talked about a film called Dam Busters, which was tremendously influential on Star Wars. And when I saw this film listed in my research in connection to the Star Wars saga, and in particular to Empire, I thought, oh, this is going to be interesting. We'll see what happens. But it's not quite as obvious as other films we talked about in the Digging Star Wars series. Test Pilot was nominated for several Academy Awards, and it was nominated for Best Picture, Best Writing, Original Story, Best Film Editing, and it did not win any Academy Awards in 1939. The 1930 film did not win any awards in 1939.
That's what I found.
Yeah, and there's not too much to it. Before we get into talking about the film, or I should say talking about the connections, I just want you Gaetan, to give me an honest review of what you thought of the film.
Well, I think you were right. You were dead on the money when you said it wasn't really about much. I mean, it felt like, it was obvious. Heavy dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of like almost like this immature banter between the characters all the time.
Mm-hmm.
To me, anyhow. And obviously the alcohol is going to affect flying. I'm kind of curious, how that, with the connections to Star Wars, if anything has to do with that. But yeah, like you said, it was kind of just dry. I actually was watching it, last night a little bit, and my wife and my son were kind of staring at the TV. They were kind of like, what are you doing?
Yeah. Why are you wasting your time watching this movie?
It was, and yeah, like I said, and I could see. I'm not sure if it was nominated, for those awards because it had all those, big time actors in it. Was that the first time that they were all together?
They no, from what I recall from the setup they gave it on Turner Classic Movies, they Spencer Tracy and Clark Gable appeared in 3 films. And I don't know the 3 films off the top of my head right now. The Test Pilot is one of them. I think this was the second time that Clark Gable and Spencer Tracy appeared together. I know that Clark Gable at this point in history, in film history, was the man.
Okay.
Like everybody wanted him in their movie, and to have Clark Gable and Spencer Tracy. Now Spencer Tracy was certainly popular, but he was not as popular as Clark Gable this time. It was putting 2 powerhouses in a picture, which ironically could be, death to the picture.
Right.
If they can't pull it off. Test Pilot apparently did very well at the box office. And I know that, from, behind the scenes perspective, both Spencer Tracy and Clark Gable had gripes with each other, but it became, playful joking, if you will, and it became really good friends over the course of this picture. But, Spencer Tracy didn't think Clark Gable was worth all the hype, and Clark Gable wanted the sort of revered respect that Tracy was already gathering, 1938. And, as for, Myrna Loy, I don't know too much about her. I thought her acting was probably the worst out of everyone on screen, but she definitely is a beauty of that day and age.
Right, yeah.
And it really wasn't a great role for her to play, if you think about it, But that being said, I think, and I don't want to make it sound like we're just kicking this film while it's down. This film was nominated for Best Picture and all these other things, and I think part of that is the star power, which we just mentioned.
Right.
And then part of that is they were using a lot of true to life experimental aircraft of that era and military aircraft, and it was very popular back in the day. As far as the fascination, there was still that fascination with aviation, and a lot of the aircraft you see in there, it was a big score for the studio to get those particular models of aircraft, actual planes to fly. And as simple as that sounds to our modern ears, that was enough to get people to buy tickets and go sit in the dark theater for 2 hours.
Right.
So that's kind of cool. And when you sit there watching the film, they are pretty cool planes, and in particular, the National Air Races, very funky, weird scene, but it's still like I could see sitting in the theater in 1938 and being like, this is awesome.
Right.
But in short, I think if you look through a lot of the films that I've discussed throughout Digging Star Wars, I don't think this is going to be the first one people reach for. I think it's a good, but it's worth watching just to see what the deal was with Tracy and Gable at the time. You know, I mean, this is typical Clark Gable. You know, and I don't know a lot of I'm embarrassed to say this. I don't know a lot of Spencer Tracy's early work, and so it's kind of interesting seeing him playing this role and seeing how easily he can steal a scene.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he just the way he delivers his line and the marking and whatnot, and I believe a lot of that's him. And it was interesting that, you know, it was just an interesting film in that regard, but it isn't something that you're going to sit down and be really excited to watch. I think it's and I'm trying to be polite and as nice as possible to it. This is a really good old movie to watch when you don't know what to watch late at night. You know, like you just kind of settle in and like next thing you know, you're slowly getting involved. I just think it's interesting that my research turned this film up because again, there's definitely some things I want to talk about when we get to that.
Mm. Were the actors like at the height of their careers at that point, or they were pretty popular in?
Clark Gable was popular at this time.
Right.
I mean, he was in high demand, and Spencer Tracy was renowned, but I don't think he was as much as a box office attraction as Gable. Certainly didn't hurt. And I don't know too much more about Myrna Loy at this point, but I mean, she definitely was easy on the eyes, and you needed someone to balance out Tracy and Gable. So all in all, it was to me this film looks like the stereotypical perfect package on paper to a Hollywood executive.
Yeah.
You know, we're going to have planes. It's got drama. You know, it's got tension.
Right.
And you've got 3-star power, and people are going to be riveted. You know, and I mean, it's you know, they run the film on TV. It's definitely not something that's just god awful and no one's going to want to watch. But it doesn't. Like I said, it's not as electric as I personally wanted it to be.
Huh.
If that makes any sense.
Well, it's like they banked, you know, it's like Transformers, you know, in the movies it's kind of like they banked on all of the, you know, the effects they can do now, you know, and probably, you know, the first Transformers I thought was decent, you know, and the rest of them I thought, you know, they could say, well, we could put as many robots transforming on the film as possible, you know, fighting each other, you know, they can get away with it, you know, without, and also having, you know, the female actor, which is, I forget her name, who's, you know, beautiful, but, you know, it kind of did the same thing almost with that, you know, and guess what, I'm a sucker for that. I'll watch robots battle each other all day.
That's funny. So that's all so neat. It was one of these planes to transform, and it would have been awesome.
Yeah, maybe.
All right, well, tell you what, we're going to take another quick break, and then when we come back from the break, we're going to see what the heck this film has to do with Star Wars.
Okay.
All right, welcome back. We're talking about Test Pilot, 1938 film with Clark Gable, Spencer Tracy, and Myrna Loy, and how it pertains to Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. The main reason I compared this with Empire was that in my research for digging Star Wars, when I came up with my list of films, Test Pilot came up, and it was said simply related to all 6 Star Wars films.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And it was listed.
All 6?
It was all 6. It was listed on more than one website. And of course, I don't have that stuff in front of me right now. But one of the websites was IMDb at the time, and it had a connection pointing to Empire. So I just scribbled down that note and left it at that. Now, you know, keep in mind, this upcoming Halloween, Digging Star Wars turns 2. We launched 2 years ago on Halloween night. So I'm looking at notes from 2 years ago. You know, and I can't remember 2 hours ago, let alone 2 years ago. But I thought the little bit that I read about Test Pilot prior to reading it was, oh, this is going to be a perfect old school, almost not screwball comedy, romantic comedy, but like the playful banter between 2 guys and girl, much like Han, Luke, and Leia.
Yeah.
You you know. And I thought if any film has really good banter, specifically between Princess Leia and Han Solo, it's Empire Strikes Back. I mean, that's like the perfect movie for them. But as I watched Test Pilot, I didn't really see that. I mean, I saw a little bit of banter. In one of the scenes I posted, I don't know if I posted it on the Digging Star Wars Facebook page or whatever, was when Clark Gable lands his plane in Kansas, and you know, Myrna Loy walks up and like, you know, Gable's all business and hands in the ship and oily and just shouting orders to her, and she doesn't take it. You know, like, she's not the simple farm girl he thinks she is. And it was kind of Han and Leia, but I didn't quite get what I wanted. But the more I thought about it, you know, the story of Test Pilot, you know, Gable always puts Spencer Tracy and Myrna Loy in a bad situation with his drinking and going out and partying or whatever. And, you know, Spencer Tracy's this stoic, he's the mechanic that works for Gable. And he's this stoic character that always is there and makes sure that, you know, they kind of get back on track, both his marriage and his career as a test pilot. And it was in one scene where, you know, I think Tracy's talking to Loy after Gable had an argument and he left, and it just dawned on me like, oh, it's not Luke, Han, and Leia here, it's Han, Chewie, and Leia. You know, because
yeah, you're right.
And the funny thing is, you know, like in the expanded universe, I think it was in the book Shadows of the Empire, they explore how Chewie has, you know, he already had a life debt to Han, but when Han in the movie The Empire Strikes Back says to Chewie, like, you got to take care of the princess, you got to take care of her, they explore that in Shadows of the Empire, how like Chewie goes to the ends of the earth to protect Princess Leia. You know, Han told him to do that. And I think that relationship is very present between Clark Gable's character, Spencer Tracy's character, and Myrna Loy's. And did you see that? I mean, do you think that's crazy or?
Yeah, no, I definitely saw, you know, Han and Leia, and especially in that one scene where you just mentioned when he lands the plane, you know, and kind of like he's like this kind of, you know, he's Han, he's like kind of a rebel. He comes down and it's his way, you know, and that's it. And then all of a sudden, you know, with what's her name again?
Myrna Loy is the actress. Her character's name was Thursday Lane.
That's right.
Oh, Thursday, and then she gets married.
Yeah, and she comes off exactly like Leia, almost like, you know, putting him in his place, you know, and then he kind of realized, whoa, I kind of almost like met my match here.
Right.
So I got that, you know, definitely got that. And it was also interesting where she makes that, you know, in her little speech there. I don't think it was in that scene, it was a little later, where she said, you know, a prince fell from the sky.
Oh yeah. That's the same scene. It's the Kansas scene. She's like basically mocking him.
Yeah. Basically. But it was interesting because like we're kind of comparing her to Princess and it was the prince falling from the sky.
Right.
But then Gunner, right? Gunner's the mechanic who
Spencer Tracy.
Spencer Tracy's Gunner, and definitely. Well, I was thinking the same thing. It was like Luke, and then when you brought up Chewie, I'm going, yeah, because Chewie's like the voice of reason. You know, he's kind of like he keeps things stable. You know, when Han's going nuts or whatever it is, and he was always kind of you're exactly that character, and I thought when I was watching it, I was kind of like, well, it was kind like you said, you kind of got it, but it wasn't all there, and then until you realize that maybe that was supposed to be Chewie, you know, and then you're like, oh yeah, it has that definite chemistry between those three.
Because it's odd in Test Pilot, like when you stand back and look at it, like I always felt it was odd that Spencer Tracy was there. Like even like when Jim and Thursday get married and they're going back to their apartment, Gunner's still in the taxi with them, you know? Like, the night of their wedding, and then Gunner makes that big, you know, Spencer Tracy makes it like, oh, I'm gonna go over here for the night or whatever, and they're like, oh, why? Like, why would you do that?
Right.
And like, well, we all know why you would do that.
Yeah.
So, I just thought it was interesting how, it seemed weird, and then, and maybe this is just me being me, but when I made the connections to Han, Leia, and Chewie, I was like, that's not so weird, because that's how it works in Star Wars.
Yeah. Right.
To your point, like Chewie's the Rock. He's
right.
faithful to the bitter end. No matter what happens, he's going to be there.
But it's weird in reality.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
It's like the third wheel. It's.
Yeah, and I was waiting for, and maybe this is more of a modern a modern moviegoer expectation, but I was waiting for there to be some love story between Thursday and Gunner.
I was too.
Just like I can't believe I always fall for the bad guy. You're always here.
Right.
And it never, ever, ever happens. And I know it's a big spoiler, people, but
Sorry.
Yes, exactly. But maybe this will make you want to watch the movie. But no, I just found that interesting, and I'm wondering if that's supposed to be tension that is supposed to be on screen, because it's not really tension to me. It's kind of like, why aren't you pursuing this?
Right.
This would be an interesting story angle. But no, I thought it was interesting. I'm glad that you don't think I'm totally crazy for that, because once I realized Spencer Tracy has traces of Chewie, I thought this is going to be a little weird to ask. But
right.
There's only two other things that I found interesting, and they do not pertain to Empire, but they do pertain to other Star Wars films. And I'm wondering if that's where this whole all six thing comes in or whatever. But and the first one's just a throwaway line of dialogue. But early in the film, they're talking about the Drake bullet, which is the first scene that Clark Gable's character Jim Link's gonna fly. And they're talking about, it's an experimental prototype, and, is it going to make the trip, and blah, blah. And Gunner says, don't you worry, she'll hold. And it totally reminded me of Han's line from New Hope, like, don't worry, she'll hold together.
Yeah.
And which is, I think, something that could be probably mentioned in any space/aircraft movie ever. But coming from the Star Wars angle, I'm like, I think that's kind of interesting. And again, it's about Falcon, it's about Han and Chewie, but it's a Han line.
Right.
But the really other one that jumped out at me that I think is even bigger than the Han, Leia, Chewie connection to the test pilot characters is the National Air Race. And they hype up this National Air Race and how important it is, and they've hinted about test pilot, and when you get into the scene of the National Air Race, it is a lot like the Episode 1 pod race.
Yep.
And I know, the funny thing is, I think when most people see Episode 1 and they see the pod race, if you're going to connect it to any classic film, you're going to connect it to Ben-Hur.
Yeah.
Chariot races. But at first the thought of it, okay, so they're flying and it's a race. Again, it's kind of generic, but the way they went about shooting and editing that scene was very similar, because you have Spencer Tracy and Myrna Loy together. They're stuck on the side watching this race helplessly, which was a lot like the cutaways to Anakin's mom and Padme and Qui-Gon and Jar Jar watching Anakin in the pod race.
Right.
Video monitors. You have an announcer. I think that in Test Pilot, it's just surreal that there's an announcer on a microphone talking to a crowd, and these planes are flying relatively low to the ground, and he's announcing planes turning and banking and everything else. Again, it's a lot like Episode 1 with.
So like a play-by-play.
It's a play-by-play, right? You have the crowd watching, which again is kind of surreal that it's an air race, but it's I guess because it's in a marked course, it's in a relatively tight landscape. It makes sense for there to be a crowd there, but it's just like the pod race. The pod race goes through the desert, in stretches, and yet there's still people sitting in stands like they would to watch an event on a soccer field or a football field. And then what happens? Clark Gable's plane. What does it do? It starts smoking. Smoke starts blowing out, just like Anakin's pod race.
Yeah.
And then there's all that stress of what's he going to do? Is he going to get out of the race and save his life? Is he going to continue racing to try to win? And all the tension like you have with Anakin and his pod racer. And then of course the other character that they make a big deal about, Benson, his plane crashes, and it's spectacular, and it's a lot like the many crashes in the pod race, in particular Sebulba's, because they set up prior to the air race how Benson is really looking forward to winning this race, and you don't know if it's just confidence or whatever, and he's a nice guy. He's not like the bad character of Sebulba in episode 1. He's like, you kind of get the idea he's the favorite to win. And so it's very interesting the fact that, Gable's plane has a smoking issue just like Anakin's pod racer, and both Sebulba and Star Wars and Benson's plane in Test Pilot go out in a spectacular crash near the end of the race, just when you think they have it, and what ensues from there.
Sure.
Does that make any sense to you? Does that
Yeah, it does. I mean, it does, but I'm not sure. I don't know. I would love to ask Mr. Lucas if that was his intent, like that was that close to copying Test Pilot for the pod races,
Well, that's the thing with a lot of these movies when we talk about it. It's there's certain coincidences or just given cliches that are going to repeat themselves.
Yeah.
Certain stories.
Right.
But then, and this may be more me forcing a movie on top of another movie, but like when I watch that scene and when I start listing all the common features, I was a little blown away. I was like, maybe I picked the wrong Star Wars movie to talk about. Maybe this should have been episode 1. But no, I think it still pertains to Empire because of the relationship deal. But
yeah.
Hence this might be it has to deal with all the movies. Once again, you're listening to Digging Star Wars, and we're discussing Test Pilot and its connection to Empire Strikes Back and other Star Wars films. And I want to give another shout out to my niece Rachel Sabella, who supplied all the music for today's episode. She composed this stuff. Some of the stuff she composed when she was 10, or maybe younger. Yeah, and she formed all this on her keyboard for me, and I really appreciate that. I try really hard to get original music, and it was really cool to have a family member contribute. So that's just great. So thank you, Rachel. So we talked about the connections to Star Wars. I think we found some things, and I actually, I don't know about you, but like that made me like Test Pilot a little more once I started thinking about the connections to Star Wars.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you never know what you're going to get with these, and sometimes it's just a line of dialogue or a shared location. But the fact that there's a couple things to talk about is pretty cool.
I thought it was amazing too how, Harrison Ford and the rest of the actors kind of nailed that, almost that same chemistry, and they were new actors.
Yeah.
So they kind of, if that's what he was going for, I wonder if he was kind of like, well, you're going for this Clark Gable thing, or not, but that was pretty amazing. It's for them to get it right. I think that's obviously why Star Wars was so successful. With the characters, how well they work together too.
Well, they're really good characters, and I think in the case of the original trilogy in particular, Lucas spent a lot of time writing them. A New Hope, and then working with other writers for Empire and for Jedi. He worked with Lawrence Kasdan and Lee Brackett and other writers. I think he really took the time to make these characters iconic. Han he's a space pirate, but really he's more of a cowboy, and Luke is that gee whiz farm boy off on adventures to the world, and Princess Leia is a very unique twist on the damsel in distress.
Yeah.
And so he took a lot of time crafting and reaching into imagery and characteristics that resonate. I mean, it is a myth, a modern myth. And then the flip side of that is just excellent casting.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And because Carrie Fisher Mark Hamill and Harrison Ford playing those three major roles was absolutely perfect. Absolutely perfect. And he did do a really good job, for the most part, casting with the prequels. I mean, there's plenty of arguments about, certain characters versus others, but, it's not all on whims, and there's a lot of thought put into every aspect of filmmaking. It's very involved, and but when it works, when it's great, it's really great, and like we said earlier in this particular episode, sometimes you get three major players, three major actors out there, and you think it's going to be a walk through the park, and it's just a disaster, and I don't think Test Pilot is a disaster. I don't think it is. I just think we're not of the age where we're impressed simply by the fact that Clark Gable's on the bill.
Right.
So
it needs to be Transformers, robots.
Exactly. That was missing the robots.
Right.
No, it's interesting to that point to see, I think people look at Star Wars and they think, even the first Star Wars, the film that came out in 1977, how slow it moves to modern films.
Yeah.
We are we're just in Test Pilot. There's fans of the prequels that when they look at the original trilogy and they're Star Wars fans, they're like, man, these original films are slow.
Yeah.
So it just, it just goes, as we evolve, we can process information faster and that's the way it is. But just like I don't want the original trilogy ever to be disregarded or lost, I don't want films from the 30s to be disregarded or lost just because they move at a slower pace, because they do tell something about that era,
Sure.
and give us a window into not only what, everyone involved in film were trying to create, their vision of the world and what they were trying to say, but it also gives us a speak into what audiences were about back then, which is great. That's the fun thing about, especially the older films, is thinking wow, what was it like to be in the theater watching this in a first run?
Yeah.
That's what I have fun imagining, and the draw and the excitement of it all. But to that point with the characters, we were saying A New Hope and of course carrying over in an Empire and the other movies, Star Wars is really rich with characters, and the great thing about the characters was all the action figures that came with it. Because when you were in the Star Wars and you were a kid, and I, we made great efforts to have these different action figures, and we had so many diverse, visually looking characters and characters with history, and you could make up your history. And you were talking, when we were preparing for this episode, you talked about, looking at the action figures and our experience playing with them, how that was the early forms of writing.
Yes, actually, a short little story I have about where my Star Wars, I guess, not obsession, but where I was first introduced to Star Wars was 1977, and I lived in South Philadelphia, and I was 4 at the time, and my mom loved movies and actors, and she was in Center City, and with my aunt, and she saw a limo pull up. So, of course, she sees limo, she thinks famous, actor, whatever.
Right.
So she runs up to the limo with me in her arms and my aunt and says, well, who's in the limo? And the limo driver comes out and says, there's no one in here now, but I have a couple actors that are going to be in this movie coming up called Star Wars.
Wow.
And it was Carrie Fisher and Mark Hamill. And
wow.
And she never met them or saw them, but that's when she said to us, oh, really? We're going to have to go see this movie. And I don't know if because of my mom told me the story so many times or I actually do remember, but I do remember in my mom's arms in line to see Star Wars for the first time. And
right.
that's when I was actually 3, 4. So, and after that, like you said, we make great efforts to get action figures. And, when I was, growing up, I had, and I still have them, most of my action figures. And my mom always used to go to the toy store for me, after I found out, when they're having a delivery. Because you needed Bosk. You needed him, you needed the guy for the scene.
Right.
But now as a published author, but not that you have to be published to be an author, that I always, kind of, blame my writing or my storytelling on my toys. And I always, tell kids that all the time, is that I spent hours in my basement when I was a kid, setting up my action figures and just making stories. I wasn't writing them down. I was doing it all in my head. And that was the beginning of me. And it always started with the movie. You tried to reenact the movie, but then I was like, well, what happened if, what happens if Boba Fett went this way instead of this way? Whatever. What happened? What did the Wampa do? What was it? Like, what was he doing? Did he have a family? What did he do? But you start creating these stories, and that was the beginning of my storytelling. Absolutely. If anyone ever asked me, that was the first thing I tell them. And it's the importance of play. A friend of mine, author and educator, and one of my great mentor to me, Barry Lane. He just posted this, and I just posted on my Facebook page the Mr. Rogers thing. I don't know if you saw that, and it goes totally into what I'm talking about how he said, a lot of people dismiss, play with kids as being, oh, it's just playing. But I think the quote is, playing is the work of childhood.
Yeah.
And that's what I was doing. And I was working. I was making stories. And then later on, I learned how to write them down, and all the other stuff came later. But that was really a huge, developmental part of me creating characters and creating stories. And a lot of people, when they read my book, that's kind of the first thing they're attracted to is how I develop a character or give them a personality, which is hard to be taught. It's almost like, because I'm teaching kids this, and it's really hard to be taught. It's something that kind of, rubs off, after a long time of watching movies and playing and creating and observing people, and I think that has a lot to do with it. But I always credit my toys. It's funny when I say that to kids and they're like, really? And then I show them pictures of me playing with my toys, or I bring my toys in.
Right.
Which I still have, and which is an ultimate delight for me to see my own kids, playing with the toys that I did, and of course we just keep, building generations of Star Wars fans that way.
Yeah, totally. I know it's going to just sound like I'm just blowing a lot of praise to Lucas, but that's the brilliance of what Star Wars is, because it wasn't just what was up on the screen. It was what was going on behind, and that's really why, the expanded universe, all the novels and comics and the Clone Wars TV show and all these other things, why they are so popular, because it's not because they just want more things in front of them or they want more things with the Star Wars logo on it. Is that, people's minds are constantly racing and wanting to explore. And I think it's really cool that, to your point, you brought that up. And, I definitely see that with my own children, how they play and what they favor to and how they're discovering things. And now, when they get a writing assignment from school, there's the initial, it's a writing assignment, to which I'm always like, nah, this is great. You know why? Because now you finally get to share all those cool things you were doing.
Yeah.
Like you finally, but I got to write it. It's like, I know, it's work, but it's fun work, and you get to share and create, and then, they do see the reward of it once it's complete and once other people are reading it and enjoying it. And I think it's a challenge. I would imagine, and you could definitely speak better to this. That's a real challenge, having a kid leap ahead in the future to see the reward of writing. Yeah,
it's definitely. I mean, it takes a year to more than that to get them to realize it. And really, the reward of writing is, to me, it's having created something, and it's, at the end, it's kids can't see that because they have a hard time with the work of it, and like the revision and the editing and talking to people about it, and taking advice. And I think it's very difficult. It could get very intricate, in doing that. So, and you take steps with kids, when you're doing that, and you make them, understand the terminology, not really understand it, but know it. Next step would understand it, but, in the end, is that they have this thing that they created, which they should be very proud of, and there's value there, which is very important. And I think going back to the characters, which reminded me, I'm rewinding a little bit, but when you're creating the characters, or when Lucas created the characters, and we took them and did other things with them, I think it's because they felt so real. Mm-hmm. Is why, and Lucas would, thought, I never heard him say it, but those characters were almost like they were real. And I think, which also brings me to, Tolkien with Lord of the Rings. I always bring this up when I'm talking about creating characters, is, anytime someone asks Tolkien about, what about, Gimli's family, or, Frodo, did he have any brothers or sisters, or whatever it is? Mm-hmm. And it wasn't Tolkien. I saw this somewhere, read it or on a documentary. He said, Tolkien never said, well, I'm going to have to write that, or I'm going to have to make that up. He'd always say, well, you know what? Let me go find out for you.
That's awesome.
Like, this was real.
Right. Right. Like, it already existed. He needed to discover it. That's great.
Yeah. It wasn't, like I said, it wasn't something he had to go make up. It was something he had to go find. That, well, I'm going to go ask Gimli, And I think he wrote, of course he wrote Lord of the Rings like history, like it really happened, and which some people believe.
That's it for this episode of Digging Star Wars. I hope that if you are stuck in on a rainy day, you give Test Pilot a try. Should you be able to find it? It was a good little old black and white movie. I mean, that's probably the best I can say. And I want to thank Gaetan. I want to thank you for your time. I really appreciate you hanging in here and joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you. Anytime. This was awesome. It was a blast.
Yeah, it's you never know where the episode's going to go, so it was really cool talking about things we talked about, and I appreciate your expertise, and thank you so much for, I don't know if you hear, but I try to tell teachers thank you, because I feel like you guys have the, one of the hardest jobs out there, and I know it's not as easy as I think a lot of parents think it is. Yeah,
I could agree. Well, being a parent, and a teacher, it's definitely is true. I mean, you have your own kids at home, and I think it's what teachers have to do, now, and what kids even. I mean, it's not even teachers. What kids are expected to do, and learn is difficult. Sometimes, like neurologically not ready, but we're all they're all working hard, to do the best they can. But that's it's a challenging time.
Yeah, that's putting it mildly. Well, again, thank you. And if people are interested in getting your book, where should they go?
You can get my book. You can get it on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and you can get it both in digital or hard copy, or it's actually a paperback form. And locally, around here, you can get it, around me, you can get it in the Music Laboratory in Deptford, New Jersey, since it's a local music store that's carrying it right now. Or you can check my website, www.GaetanPappalardo.com, for any author visits I'm doing. I'm doing one, I believe, on the November, it's that Monday after Thanksgiving, at the Deptford Free Public Library. So I'll be there doing a little music and author visit, and also having some books there to sign and to to share with the public.
Awesome. That's great. And for those of you listening and you want to supply a comment to this episode and talk about Test Pilot or anything else, of course you can go to our website, which is diggingstarwars.blogspot.com. You can also go to our Facebook page, and we are also on YouTube. So just type in Digging Star Wars, you'll see a bunch of our episodes there. So and SoundCloud.com as well. So we're kind of all scattered all over the place. But at any rate, thank you for listening. Our next episode will be connecting a classic film to Return of the Jedi, and we're going to look at the connection between The Godfather and Return of the Jedi. So hope you people come back, give that a good listen, and thank you for listening again. And Gaetan, thanks again for your time. Happy Halloween and happy holidays.
Yes.
Digging Star Wars is produced by Mitch Media and has no connection to Lucasfilm Limited whatsoever. Copyrights for films, trademark characters, and related materials discussed in Digging Star Wars remain with their respective owners. For a list of references or source material, please send an email to diggingstarwars@gmail.com.